All right. I got roaring quick, didn't it? All right, this is Hasty Bake 101. For those of you guys tuning in on Facebook Live, we'll probably go into a little bit of fire management too, because I think the folks in the class, say hi to everybody. I think the folks in the class here, for the most part, have been Hasty Bake users for a little while. But we kind of just want to start from scratch on the 101, kind of give you guys the benefits of it. So you're here to learn everything we can teach you about the grill. I'm here because the bars aren't open yet, but we're going to get rolling. So, Dan, how long have you been using Hasty Bake?
I've had one since the 80s, then I kind of quit using them for a while, and now a couple of years.
Okay. And you're just barely getting yours, right? Have you ever fired one up yet? Great. So we'll cover some basics for that. That'll be super helpful on video. And then you said you've had yours for a while.
I've had one for about 25 years.
Okay, and how are you? Okay, so kind of a good mix. I normally like to get a good mix in because you always end up picking up something that, you know, for 20 years you've done something, you're like, oh, I never thought about doing it that way. And then kind of, we'd like to take the learning curve off the front end, or for new users, just because trying to learn something new that, you know, the concepts are there, like light the charcoal, grill over the charcoal, that's fine, but to take advantage of like the way the thing was created and designed and engineered, you're going to see a lot more beside that. So we're working on some legacies this morning. The legacies are these models. I don't have a gourmet here, but it's the cart version of that model that's over there. They cook very similarly. Airflow is a little bit different in them, so we can kind of get into some differences between those models. Did you buy a legacy? Okay, great. So we'll just go ahead and kick off on the legacy. Again, probably covering some stuff you guys know, but Grant Hastings originally designed the legacy, which became the legacy. It wasn't originally called the legacy. And the goal was to cook as good a barbecue as his favorite good place was. So got out of the Army, started building some grills, trying to find the right kind of grill to build that would give him the kind of barbecue he wanted because he loved cooked ribs. So to this day, most people consider like ribs on a Hasty Bake kind of like, you know, the end all and be all. That's really what it was designed for. But it cooks everything really, really well. So a couple things just on the design of this, so you guys kind of know, is one, just starting on the box itself. Obviously, the most obvious thing on the Hasty Bake is going to be your crank that gets you from your smoke, bake, sear position. Very, very few grills on the market have that. No grills on the market have the extent to which we have, which is about a full 18 inches from the bottom of the tray all the way up to the top. So you can get a good kind of traditional offset style smoke all the way up to searing right underneath the grates. If you pull out the drip rod, then we'll cover that kind of in a minute, you can actually get your grate right smack dab, your firebox right smack dab up against the grate, almost as if you're sitting your meat directly on the coals. So that's probably the most obvious difference between a Hasty Bake charcoal grill and another charcoal grill. You may go buy at Home Depot or something like that. We use powder coat and stainless bottles. They're both great. It just depends on how well you take care of your grill. We were talking about that before. If it's something where you kind of keep it on the back porch and never pay attention and never clean it out, we normally recommend looking at a stainless model because you're just not going to have the maintenance requirements that you will on powder coat because you're not going to deal with the rust. Powder coat, you deal with the rust, which means if you take care of it, you won't ever have to deal with the rust. But if you kind of start to neglect it, you're going to have to do some repairs on it. We can kind of cover some of that in a little bit. But the other thing right off the bat is the shape of the hood on the Hasty Bake. It looks like it's just a design decision. It's not. The air comes in on the door side. The air exits with smoke on the non-door side. And as a result, what happens is that air comes in, it kind of comes in at an angle, it hits off this back wall, and it starts rotating on the hood. So the reason this hood is not round, the reason this hood is not square, is because we want to use the curvature of that hood to kind of get the smoke to roll. So the smoke comes in, it rolls off the top of the hood, goes down, kind of covers the meat, and then finds its exit point right here at grate level, literally just below your grate. So your smoke is kind of continually circling. In addition to smoke, one of the benefits of what that design creates is it creates a very true convection style cooking, which means you're going to cook very even all the way through. Similar to like what an oven would cook, you're not going to have the amount of hot spots you would normally have on a grill because the fire and the smoke are actually kind of doing this as opposed to just going up. So I like to say that you kind of get a true convection like you would on a barrel cooker. A lot of competition guys are using these kind of steel barrel cookers. But truthfully, I like the style, the direction, the speed of the smoke on this a lot more than a barrel cooker, because a barrel cooker, as the air comes instead it goes straight up. You still get some good convection because it's kind of a round tube, but at the end of the day, you still get a lot more smoke, you get a lot more controllable heat in a model like this than you do in something like a barrel. So, kind of going in, thermometer on these grills is made by a company called Tell-Tru. They're the best thermometers in the world to put on a grill. We upgraded them several years ago to the Tell-Tru models because they're so unbelievably accurate. But we had enough people that were pulling out the stock model and putting in a Tell-Tru thermometer that we're just like, you know what, forget it, let's just buy Tell-Tru. So that's what goes on there right now. So keep in mind that whatever the temperature is saying right here is the temperature right here, not the temperature right there. So this is kind of an average temperature of what's going on in the entire cook chamber. If you're cooking something directly on the grill grate, you kind of got to figure your temperature is probably going to be about 20 to 35 or 40 degrees hotter on the grill grate. That doesn't necessarily mean that you need to adjust your cook according to it, because if you're looking at a recipe that says smoke something at 250, they're saying smoke something at 250, not smoke something at grade level. So everyone kind of in the barbecue world knows that when you're talking about temperature, you're going about the average temperature that your thermometer is using. So realistically, if you were to put like a digital grate thermometer on that grate and you're smoking at 250, you're probably smoking closer to 290 down there at the grate, and that's fine. It's not going to hurt anything. The good thing about kind of that, when you get at the searing, temperature matters a little bit more, but when you're talking about the smoking, you normally have a fair amount of swing in what you can do before you start getting some ill effects of cooking too hot or too low. So going into the model, a key thing that Hasty Make does that pretty much no one else does is we keep our grills in a V pattern. The reason for it is strictly because of the drip rod, which I'll talk about in a second. But the idea is that as your meat heats up and it starts to drip grease, that grease runs down the same way it would like in a house with your rain gutters. Hits the rain gutter, kind of goes over, follows the metal down. So it's going to run down that grate, it's going to hit that metal, and it's going to drop down into this drip rod that we have in this model. Pull this out and show you. So every model except the Ranger and the Portable utilize the drip rod. The hole on the drip rod goes on the top end. The hole on this side is a little bit higher than the hole on this side. So the drip rod actually sits in your grill at an angle. And as that grease comes in off the grate, it drips down from the middle down into your drip rod. It kicks it out the side of the grill. And we say just put a little Weber pan, kind of a loaf pan down on that side. And that'll funnel your grease away from the fire and give you just a little bit more control over your fire, over flare-ups and stuff like that. The one thing I will say about the drip rod is it's an absolutely brilliant design as long as you keep it clean. If you don't keep it clean, you'll get some grease buildup in that. One day you'll want to sear a steak and you'll raise that thing up, bam, grease fire, because there's sitting grease directly over your fire. So what I say is every time you come in here to clean your grill, so hopefully you're at least brushing your grates, once the grill is either cold or hot, however you want to do it. But I'd say go ahead and pick your grate up. So either use a gloved hand, put a tong in there. We have a grate lifter that we sell that a company makes that you can kind of pull the grate up. But take your brush or whatever you're using to clean your grate and clean out that drip rod too, just to get that grease out and away from it, and then you won't worry about some flare-ups. We'll talk about these grill grates that we have in this model here in just a little bit. But again, when you're installing this, especially if you haven't used it before, make sure that this hole, that's your hook. Make sure it goes in the hole on that side and actually hooks in so it won't slide out. And make sure that you're using the right hole, because what you'll notice on this model is you have two holes. You got two holes on this side. So one is for the rotisserie and the lower one is for the drip rod. So make sure you're kind of installing it at an angle. If you install it flat, obviously it's just going to hold grease and then it'll kind of roll in. So, all right, that's enough about the drip rod. These pans you can buy anywhere. We sell them for, I don't know, like 20 cents or something. I do recommend maybe putting a paper towel, wad it up and putting that in there. It makes it a little bit easier on the clean out. As the grease comes down, you're done with your cook, take your paper towel, throw it away. You can reuse that pan several times as opposed to having to chuck the pan after every cook or let the thing get overflowing grease or something like that. You can use a little cup or something there too, but those pans are so cheap, I just like to do that. They last for quite a while. So, talk about the insides of the grill just a touch. So as you probably noticed when you bought your grill, with that lift mechanism that we have, the bake sear smoke is the lift mechanism that goes in and out, or up and down. according to what position you want it to be in. You have an ash pan that slides out. It catches all the ash that falls out of the firebox. So you'll notice this firebox has been used. That ash goes down. It's not to the ash pan. We recommend taking that ash pan and lining it with an 18-inch heavy-duty foil. You can buy a 2-pack from Sam's for like 15, 17 bucks. I use that foil for everything. When I'm wrapping stuff, you know, butts, briskets, whatever, you're gonna wrap the foil. The heavy-duty foil is really the best way to go because it's like 3 times the thickness of a regular foil. This is not the right size, but the 18-inch foil, this is actually 18 inches across. So the 18-inch foil fits perfectly in there. So I use my grill grate as a template. I hold the foil, I pull it out because this is the width of the ash pan. I pull it out, get the right size, slide it in, kind of tuck it in. What that allows me to do is, as I'm done with that fire, as everything cools down and I want to clean out the ash out of my grill, we'll talk about how often you do that in a second. I can just take that foil, wad it up into a ball, throw it away, put out a new piece of foil, I'm done cleaning my grill. Other grills, you got to get in there with a shovel or something, kind of try to spoon the ash out, try to get everything cleaned up. This is really easy. Just take the foil and throw it away. If you don't end up doing that, you're going to have a big old pan of ash that you're trying to dump into a trash can. It just kind of ends up being a little bit of a pain in the butt. Ash pans are, just keep them clean. Now what I do like to say is, a lot of people want to clean out their ash after every single cook, and you definitely can. I definitely recommend that if it's going to rain and you're leaving your grill uncovered out, because when water and ash get together, they create lye leaks through the powder coat that causes rust. So kind of one-on-one maintenance on your grill is, if you know there's going to be moisture, a really humid day, or some kind of rain or something like that, go ahead and clean out all the ash that you can out of your grill just to prevent rust as much as possible. But me personally, I like to leave somewhere between probably 3 and 7 cooks worth of ash in the bottom of that pan for a couple different reasons. One, when there's ash lining that ash pan, you don't have the reflectivity of the metal and the foil underneath it, so you can keep your temperature down a little bit because it's kind of forming an insulating layer. 2, it allows me a buffer if my fire starts getting too hot or some wind ends up getting in the intake there and kind of creating more fire. I can go ahead and drop that firebox and lay it directly into the pile of ash, and I'm depriving it of all air, and it'll immediately start bringing my grill temperature down. So if you leave just a little bit, you know, like I said, probably between 3 and 5, 3 and 7 cooks of ash in there, you have the ability to dump that out. If when you clean that grill out, you don't have that ash in there, and then you have to dump it down, you're depriving it of air, but you're not actually able to snuff the fire out like you would when you have that ash in the bottom. So I try to leave a couple cooks in there. Again, if it rains or something, you want to go and clean it out real quick before it starts getting wet. But that's just kind of a little tool that you can use, keep in your belt, that we like to use for fire management. Explain the intakes a little bit here. On this piano hinge, there's, I think it's 5, right? 4 or 5. 5 intake holes on the door, and 5 intake or exhaust holes on the exhaust side here. And really, that's what you're going to use for temperature management on your grill, in addition to raising and lowering. But the collective temperature in the grill is going to be managed by your airflow. Raising and lowering is going to be the impact of the heat on your meat. So you can definitely drop your temperature a little bit by, you know, you're in the bake position, wheel it down and put it in the smoke. You're bringing that fire a little bit further away from the thermometer. But collectively, you kind of have an oven convection effect in there, so you're not going to make a big difference by raising and lowering where the heat is. The heat's just in the chamber, and it's always going to be in the chamber. But the amount of air that you allow into your fire is going to be the key to making sure you're managing the correct temperature in your chamber. So the most effective way to manage a fire in a hasty bake is to make sure that you're burning the cleanest fire possible. You start burning a really dirty fire, you get creosote, you get kind of a bittery, sour taste on the meat. The meat ends up kind of looking a little bit gray. And you know that because you'll notice that the smoke that's coming out of your hasty bake is kind of billowy and white. You really want the smoke on your grill to be as clear as possible. So you want to kind of know that it's there. You can kind of see the heat signature coming up. You can kind of see a little bit of particulates of the smoke, but you really don't want to be billowy white smoke. That means that you're burning a dirty fire. The way to clean up a dirty fire is to add more air, because what a dirty fire is doing is it's smoldering. So it's reaching out for any bit that it can to try to get its temperature up, and there's not enough air in there to get its temperature up. So you're really just kind of smoldering wood. It's like putting a wet piece of wood on a campfire. Is you just create all this smoke, but it's actually not creating any more heat. So a couple kind of key tricks to make sure that you're creating the right amount of airflow in your grill is going to make sure, one, that your door vent is staying open. Rarely do you want to close it all the way down unless your fire is just getting way too hot and you really want to bring it down. 9 times out of 10, you're going to want that piano hinge there about a third, if not a half of the way open, to make sure you're getting good airflow. Same kind of thing on the exhaust. Now you want to make sure that your firebox here is at the right height, so that, and I'll show this to you by opening the door. You want to make sure your firebox is at the right height so that as the air comes in, it actually has access to the charcoal. Because right now, when this is in the lowest position, you'll see the air is blowing across the top and not actually blowing underneath. So it might try to catch a little bit of that heat, but really when that air starts coming underneath the charcoal, that's really when you kind of get the catch effect and build up the fire. So you want to make sure that you're moving your firebox up into a position that the air is going to be blowing across the bottom of the firebox. And normally what that is about 2 to 3 inches off the bottom of the ash pan will give you enough on the dial that's right when it's pointing at smoke. So you can crank that dial all the way down, and you'll see it'll actually be shown lower than smoke, and it's too low. So really, the lowest position you want to get for constant air, unless you're trying to knock your fire down, is being right dead pointing at that smoke position. That's going to give you the best amount of airflow over your charcoal. The other thing is you want to make sure you don't have a buildup of charcoal in there that's restricting the air. So a lot of times people use a lot of charcoal, which is fine. I use more charcoal than most people I know. But I try to build my fire so that I'm encouraging airflow through the charcoal. If you have like the bottom of a charcoal bag where you get the small pieces and it's kind of powdery, a lot of times if you just dump that bag in and try to light it, air can't get up through that buildup of powder. So what I'll end up doing when I dump the bottom of a charcoal bag is I'll dump it all the way in there, and then I'll do this, and I'll start shaking that grate. And I'm trying to get all that little bits of charcoal powder that aren't going to do me any good. They're not going to create smoke. They're not going to create heat. I want to get them down onto the ash pan. So I've created some voids in there, enough to get the air flowing through the charcoal, and enough to keep that heat kind of continually building. So if you have a hard time with the end of a bag and it's just not lighting up right, give that thing a shake. Now what you can do, when it's hot, we encourage you to wear something like a welding glove. We sell them here. You can buy them online as a standard $15 welding glove. But these things are invaluable to have when you're working on your Hasty bait. Because as you want to manage your fire, as you want to touch pieces of metal here, opening the door, pulling out the pans, when there's hot fire, like you're going to burn the crap out of yourself if you don't do something like this. So I'll come in here with a hot glove when the fire is going, and I'll get that thing, even if it's pushed all the way in. I'll give that thing a little bit of a shake and try to drop some of that loose coal down there and get that fire going. You can really nurse a fire that's kind of on its downhill slope. You can nurse some more heat out of it. By doing that, you also create a little bit more room to maybe throw some more charcoal on if you're doing longer smoke. Questions so far on anything we talked about?
About this?
You good? You got it? You can come up and... All right. What are we going to do here? We kind of talked about the basics of that. I'm going to get a little bit into building a fire, just so you kind of know, because one of the biggest questions we get on a new charcoal grill person, and a lot of times it's someone who's only ever cooked on a gas grill before, is like, how do I build a fire? How do I manage a fire? A couple things you kind of have to consider when you're using charcoal that you don't with other fires. So, what I have here is a firebox. This is from a Continental model. Pop this firebox up. When you're cooking with charcoal, like I mentioned before, airflow is key. On a gas grill, airflow doesn't matter. Why? Because gas is constantly burning. Lid open, lid closed, vents open, vents closed. It doesn't matter. Your gas is coming out of that jet at a set amount of speed. When it's lit, it's producing a set amount of BTUs. It doesn't matter if that lid's open or closed. That may impact the heat of the grill. So you may notice when you're using a gas grill over here and you turn all your burners on high, you might come up in the 350 range, open that up for 3 minutes, close it back down, your temperature is going to be down in the 150 range until it kind of builds itself back up. Heat retention, yes, that's one thing on a gas grill, but those burners never stop depending on when that thing is open or closed. On a charcoal grill, they do. Because a charcoal grill, when you open the lid, when you open the vents, when you open the door, you're injecting air into the fire, which encourages that fire to rise. And when you close them down, you're restricting the air, which encourages that fire to go down. So you kind of have to be aware of the fact that when you open the lid, when you open the door, your fire is going to react immediately to whatever you're giving it. most of the gas grill when it doesn't. So, a couple ways we kind of combat that is one, we utilize it to our advantage, meaning when we light the grill, and we'll cover lighting the grill here in a minute, we make sure that our vent lid or our hood is open the entire time. Why? What's the three things you need to build fire? You need fuel, you need oxygen, and you need heat source, right? So we're going to provide it fuel by putting charcoal in there. We're going to provide it the heat source by using one of the ignition systems that we use, but we have to give it oxygen. So when you're trying to get a fire lit, you don't want to light a fire in a vacuum. You want to light a fire with as much air as possible. So you leave that door open, leave the door open, you leave the lid open, you get your charcoal going, get it lit. You can close down the door, but always make sure that you're leaving your hood open the entire time while that fire is starting to get going. So good morning.
Morning.
So what that looks like is typically somewhere in the range of 5 to 10 minutes you're going to want this hood to be open. For the first few minutes you can walk away from it, that fire's going to be small enough. Don't walk away from it after that or it can get out of hand pretty quick. In the lighting side of the fire, it hasn't really gotten going yet, but I'll tell you, almost anybody who's had a grease fire in a charcoal grill, be it a Hasty bake or a char broiler or a Weber or anything, is going to tell you, I walked away and I left the lid open and forgot about it. Like I went inside the house, I was putting a pork butt on and I forgot the chicken and I left the lid open and I went inside the house, came back 3 minutes later, and I had a bonfire in my back porch. It's because you let so much air into that fire by leaving that hood open. Doesn't matter the kind of grill, when you're dealing with live fire, charcoal, wood fires, ingesting that amount of air is just going to end up causing that fire to get out of hand. You combine that with a grill that maybe you haven't cleaned out as often as you should have, it's going to go up and snap. So, but utilize that on the front end to get your grill going because you want to allow all the oxygen possible to get into the grill. So what I do when I light the fire is, and we'll talk about constructing the fire here in a second, is I open that door, I get my charcoal in, I get my lighter stuff in there, I light the fire, I get it going, I leave that lid open for about 5 to 10 minutes. I come back and what I'm looking for is 2 fistful size of charcoal to be lit. Now that's if I'm smoking or if I'm kind of in the bake position. So if I'm doing a brisket or a pork butt or a whole chicken or something like that, I want 2 fistful size of charcoal and no more. A lot of times what happens is people will say, man, I can't get this grill under 400 degrees. Like it just, no matter what I do, it's always, always hot. What you've probably done is you've left that lid open long enough that you've ignited all of your charcoal. What you've done is, one, you've shortened your cook time because now that all the charcoal is going to burn, it's just going to burn. 2, you've allowed so much air into it that you can't knock it down anymore. So you can close down the vents, you can lower that firebox all you want, but at the end of the day, burning charcoal is burning charcoal. And doing all that might drop the temperature a little bit, but you're going to end up burning a smoldery, dirty fire, and you still have a bunch of charcoal that's just going to be burning. So if you start out with 2 fistful sizes of charcoal burning, and then close the lid down, balance out your vents so they're both about halfway open, and then watch that temperature rise over the next 5 to 8 minutes, you'll kind of see where you need to be. If you're cooking, you want to cook at 250, and after 5 to 8 minutes of being closed down and gathering heat, you're at 200, come on back and crack that lid for a minute, stand there with it because the fire's going, and let that fire get some air into it, close it down, and watch it gather heat again. And you'll probably come up to that 250 you're looking at. If you walk away and you come back and all your coals are going, you really can't do a whole lot about it. You're cooking hot and fast, and that's just what you're doing. So you can drop the grate down as low as you can, close it down, maybe wait half an hour and see if you can get that temperature down and try to clean up that fire before you end up putting meat on it. But you've already kind of started out on a bad leg right there if you get too much going at one time. If you get that small amount of fire going, then over the course of the hours, it's going to slowly eat through that charcoal, and that's where you get a nice long burn. So the biggest mistake I see people make is they get too much charcoal going at one time and they just can't knock the fire down past that. Now if I hear people say I can't get my fire temperature up, what they're probably doing is lighting the fire with the lid closed and not getting enough air in there, or not giving it enough time to actually build the heat. They're lighting it, they're going, they're throwing their meat on, they just haven't let enough air, haven't let that chamber kind of level out. But 9 times out of 10 they're lighting it with the lid closed. So kind of 101 on making sure you're lighting your fire right. How long have you owned a Hasty bake? Or do you own a Hasty bake?
Bought one at the last sale.
Okay, so about a year. Coming up on a year.
Maybe, yeah.
Okay, great. You've been using it quite a bit or off and on?
As much as I can.
Okay.
I'm having some problems with it,
Okay.
which is why I wanted to hear about the
Yeah,
fire.
perfect. So what we're covering today, this is kind of 101, which if you've had it for a year, the good things that you missed in the beginning, you probably already know, which is the lift mechanism and all that. We'll go into a little bit of fire management just to help people out, and then I like to try to take a good amount of time at the end to ask your questions and troubleshoot and do all after. When you're building your fire in your firebox, there's two different, well, there's more than that, but generally there's two different ways to build a fire. There's a grilling fire and there's a smoking fire. Now within those areas, you can build a long burn smoking fire, you can build a short burn smoking fire, and I can walk you guys through whatever you need to work on after, but I'm just kind of going to give you the general characteristics of it. Is a grilling fire is, you want to start grilling immediately. You're doing burgers, you're doing dogs, you're doing chicken breast, you don't want to smoke it, you just want to grill it. You want to be off and done in 20 minutes and call it good. In that case, you want to get all your charcoal going as much as possible because you want to maximize the amount of space you have and the amount of heat you have in your grill. So at that point, what I'd say is go ahead and fill your entire firebox, maybe not all the way up because that's quite a bit of charcoal. Go ahead and fill your entire firebox, about 3/4 of the way, the width of your firebox, out with charcoal. Go ahead and get it lit. You can leave that lid open for longer. You definitely want more than 2 fistful sizes of charcoal burning because you want to maximize that amount of heat. But what you do want to do is you want to make sure that whatever the size of firebox you have a zone. I try to keep it about 40% of the size of my fire that I do a cool zone. So we call that 2-zone cooking. You don't necessarily have to do that with a gas grill because you can go and turn that gas burner off if you need a cooler side or if it's getting too hot. On a charcoal grill, you don't have the convenience of being able to twist it out and turn the gas burner off. So what we do is we create a 2-zone cooking. So I can light my fire, I can put my meat directly over my fire. If I flip that burger and I'm like, ooh, that's getting a little done a little quicker than I wanted it to be, you can kind of move that over a little bit or a lot depending on how far done it is. And give yourself a little bit of play when you're building your fire so that you're not over this blazing hot fire the entire time. So a lot of times what I'll end up doing, say I'm doing some burgers, I get them on there, I get some good fire on them, I flip them. About halfway through that flip, I'll start sliding the ones over that people want a little bit more medium rare, or don't want to, the kids don't like as much char or something on there, so I might move it over to the cooler side. I might move it way over. When it's all done, if I still have 4 or 5 burgers that are going, and these ones are done, I can pull them off, or I can just get them as far away from the fire as possible, and they'll be okay for another minute or two getting that heat while these ones finish up. But giving yourself that dual zone cooking gives you a lot of play that you would normally get in something like a gas grill that's hard to do in a charcoal grill. So when you're smoking, however, you don't necessarily have to worry about hot zone and cool zone, but you do have to worry about how high you're building your fire, how deep you're building your fire, and how you're building your fire. So we're going to get into just a touch of fire management. We are going to do a fire management class here in a couple months. We just filmed a video on it. We're working on editing the video now to make it available online so that people can kind of skip through the sections they know and go into the sections they need when they're troubleshooting. But I will say when you're building your fire for a smoke fire, you want to get your charcoal in there. And what I like to do is I use lump charcoal. You don't have to. You guys are probably familiar with the different kinds of charcoal there is. Lump charcoal is literally straight wood. Charcoal is pieces of wood that's been burned down. Obviously, we're all familiar with what briquettes are. Briquettes are basically lump charcoal, because all charcoal starts out the same. It starts out as a piece of wood. And they take that charcoal, they shatter it down into a powder, they put it into a mold, and they mix it with some kind of a binder. If it's a good charcoal, they'll mix it with something like cornstarch or something that's really food friendly or food safe. If it's a lower quality charcoal, sometimes they'll mix it with stuff like borax. It's still technically legal to be in your charcoal. Kingsford Blue Bag uses borax. So if you wonder why you can go down to Walmart and get 2 bags of charcoal for $12, when you come over here or you go to Home Depot or something and buy a $20 bag of charcoal, it's because when you're buying something like Kingsford Blue Bag, I'm not saying it's a bag of charcoal, but you're getting additives in your charcoal that are a little bit cheaper, kind of a filler, versus using something a little bit cleaner. So if you're going to use charcoal briquettes, we recommend you use something quality. So Royal Oak makes some really good charcoal briquettes. B&B makes some good charcoal briquettes. There's also what they call natural charcoal briquettes. So it's kind of this, or lump briquettes. It's kind of the same thing as lump, but instead of knocking it down into powder and using kind of binders, it's a little bit thicker pieces of briquettes. They're a little bit more natural. They're not all the way down into powder. So they burn a little bit more like lump. And then something else we take advantage of, and I can talk to you guys more about this later on if you like, are different kinds of charcoal. So like these right here are competition logs. It's the same kind of concept as a briquette. It gets knocked down into powder, it gets mixed with a binder. now it gets formed into a log. I like to use these on a really long burn, and I'll tell you why in a little bit. But when you're setting up your firebox to smoke, when you're setting up your firebox to smoke, what I like to do is, one, I know how big my heat shield is. So you guys are probably aware that every Hasty make, every Legacy and Gourmet models and similar, they have heat shield. This is from a smaller model, but a heat shield. That heat shield is going to fit over, on this model it's a little off, but about 3/4 of your firebox. So truthfully, you don't really want to, when you're smoking, you don't really want to build a fire in your firebox that's longer or wider than your heat shield, because now you're going to have exposed fire, and the whole point of smoking is that you're kind of offsetting your fire so you don't have direct contact with your meat. So kind of figuring out where your heat shield is, start building your charcoal amount up to that. So what I do when I'm smoking kind of a standard, let's say I'm doing a whole chicken or a pork loin, it's going to be about a 2-hour smoke, maybe a little bit less than that. Excuse me, I want to get a good long burn on it, but I'm not looking for a 10 or 12-hour burn like I am for an 18-pound brisket. I'm going to do a layer of charcoal on the bottom. It's probably going to be about half the height of the firebox wall. And then I'm going to come back in, and I'm going to layer some wood. Whatever your wood preference is. I'm a big pecan fan. I'm a big fruit wood fan. If I'm doing beef, I love using oak. So I'm going to take that charcoal, it's about half the size of the firebox wall, and then I'm going to start taking chunks of this, and I'm going to start dispersing it throughout the fire. And I'll probably put 5 or 6 chunks throughout the fire. If you don't like smoke as much, you can use less. You can put a couple in there. There's some people who like the concept of smoke, but really don't like heavy smoke. The lump charcoal itself, because it comes from natural wood, will create smoke on its own. So you don't necessarily have to add this. What I like to do is add a little extra flavor, whatever your preference is. Pecan is a nice kind of a medium mild smoke. You get up into the oaks or into the mesquites or into the hickories, they become a lot stronger, a lot more overpowering. If that's your palate, absolutely go that route. If you're sensitive to something like acid reflux or something, you probably want to stay away from the heavier smokes. If you've ever gone to a traditional barbecue place and for the next 2 or 3 hours you kind of have those barbecue burps that are kind of coming up, a lot of times that's because they could be burning during the fire, but I'll give them the benefit of the doubt and say they're probably just using a lot of wood that's a stronger essence wood, like a hickory or an oak or something like that. That's why I like to stick to pecan. It's a good mild wood. You can add a lot into it and not over smoke your stuff. And then I like to throw some fruit wood in there too if I want to. So this is cherry. Cherry's wonderful. It actually gives kind of a good reddish color to your meat. It's got some good kind of sweet color. You can use apple, you can use peach, whatever you want. I encourage you to experiment with it. Although I do say, I think in almost every situation you should be using chunks and not wood chips. Wood chips burn up too fast, flat out. You just will not see the benefit. The only time I ever use wood chips, I keep 1 bag of mesquite wood chips on me. And if I'm doing something like a burger and I just want to pop a little bit of smoke in there, I'll light a fire and I'll throw some wood chips on it, and I'll get smoke for about 2 minutes on that burger. Not really going to be overpowering, but might add just a little pop of flavor to that burger, but that's it. But on a long burn, there is no reason why you should be using wood chips. And also, there's no reason why you should be soaking your wood. So tradition has always kind of said, take your wood chunks, take your wood chips, put them in a bucket, cover them up in water, let them soak for half an hour, 45 minutes, and then pull them out and throw them on the fire, and they're not going to burn up as much because they're wet, right? Well, have you ever put a piece of wood on a fire that's wet and felt like this is doing its job? No, what you're doing is you're steaming your wood out, and you're creating moisture into the fire, and then at some point that wet wood is going to smoke, is going to smoke, is going to smoke, is going to go up in flame, and then burn like wood should. There's been scientific studies that have been done by people who are a lot smarter than me, paid a lot more money than I am. They take logs and things like that, and they soak them down in wood for 12 hours, 24 hours. They come up, they cut them, they measure the amount of moisture in them, and flat out, adding water to wood, it never gets into the center of your wood, so it actually doesn't create much more than just an outer layer of water. Now, on chips, they might make a little more of a difference. But when you're burning, what you're actually doing, what you see as smoke is actually steam. So you're steaming your meat. You're creating all this moisture in the chamber from all this water. So you're not getting any benefit of a smoke flavor at all when you soak it, until that wood now is completely dried out, and it does what wood does when it gets hot. It starts building its temperature, it starts smoking, it starts smoldering, and it starts igniting. So what you may perceive as throwing a wet piece of wood chunk on a fire is 45 minutes of smoke. You're getting about 20 to 25 minutes of steam, and then eventually you're going to get the smoke that you would get out if you just put that wood on there in the beginning and let it smoke. So Don't bother wasting the water to do soak your chips. I've seen people soak it in beer. That's a horrible abuse of beer. Like, just put some dry wood on your fire and call it good. So again, going back to the build of the fire, I do half a firebox full, half width, half high. I throw some chunks on there, and then I backfill with more charcoal on top of that, and then I'll probably throw a couple chunks on top. Normally when I'm doing a medium smoke, so I say maybe a 2 or 3 hour smoke, if you come up to about the height of the firebox, maybe a little bit higher, you're going to get plenty of time out of that cook, and you'll be doing good. If I'm doing a real long burn smoke, so I'm talking ribs where I'm doing maybe 4 or 5, closer to 4 or 5 hours, kind of a low and slow traditional rib, I'll end up piling that that charcoal higher than the firebox, but still kind of within the bounds of that heat shield that's on top. Now we can talk more later on about a long burn if you guys want afterwards when I'm doing like an 8 or 10 or 12 hour burn. We're going to cover that in our fire management class. But there's a specific way that I build the fire that allows airflow to kind of move in at a more open level on the bottom, and it gets denser and denser and denser on top until that top kind of acts as a shield that holds that fire down. And I will get, literally without touching the grill other than maybe an occasional vent adjustment, I'll get 8 or 10 or 12 hours out of that burn by building the fire correctly. But that's utilizing a certain build. So I won't cover it in the 101. If we want to talk after, I can kind of give you the rundown on that. But that's really the gist of grilling. You want to get everything as hot as possible and create your zones. Smoking, you want to kind of build up that charcoal and that wood, so that the idea is as that charcoal burns, and occasionally it hits a piece of wood, it burns, that wood goes out. By the time that wood goes out, it's catching another piece of wood, and as it's burning through, you constantly have an influx of smoke that's going the entire width of your fire. That kind of gives you the same effect as you would like on a traditional offset smoker where you're doing nothing but wood. Well, of course, when you're burning nothing but wood, you have wood smoke the whole time. When you're doing charcoal, you don't quite get that benefit. So having those wood chunks dispersed, that's a great way to do it. Some people, and I've done this in the past, one of the probably most famous posts on our Facebook page is a post I did about 3 years ago that continues to recycle itself, where I put a long piece of wood in here and built charcoal around it and kind of allowed that to burn it. That's one way to do it too. You just kind of got to play around and experiment. But you get some really good, useful information every single time you cook based on, you remember how you built your fire. Kind of know, okay, I want it to burn a little bit longer, so I probably need to do this. I want it to get a little hotter, so I probably need to do that. Just try to analyze as you're cooking what it's doing and what it's not doing and what you might have done to impact that. That'll make a big difference in how you build your fire. So a couple more things I kind of want to cover, kind of care and feeding of your grill. We talked about using welding gloves. It's a hot grill, there's always fire in it. Like, just treat it like it's hot. Use a good welding glove to manage things. One thing I kind of find indispensable with my grills is using a coal rake. This one's we have manufactured for us. Weber makes one that's solid stainless steel. But the idea is, this is a combo cleaner and coal rake, and I'll cover that in a second. But the idea is that you have a tool that you can open your firebox door, and you can go in there and you can manipulate and move your charcoal around. So if you're not getting a clean enough burn, you can go in there and kind of knock some holes in it and try to get some more air. If you're kind of at the tail end of your burn and you don't want all that wood to go out at one time, you can kind of come in and rake all your coals up into a pile and kind of get some collective heat going from it. Whereas if you left all those coals on their own, you get tons of oxygen and they're just burning, and they're going to go real fast. So by keeping your coal bed kind of nice and concise, you actually end up getting a longer burn, but you can only use that when you have a really good tool. So you can use some tongs for it a little bit, but really a good coal rake is the way to go. So we have those inside. You can buy them anywhere, really. The reason this is wood, which you kind of think, okay, wood and fire, that's a little weird. It's not in there very long. But this is also a grill cleaner. And what that means is, I'll show you this. Starting out, this is completely flat. Once you get your meat off, kind of inside, eating food and everything, you come back, still got kind of a hot grill. On the first time you cook on this, you're going to go ahead and you're going to start sliding it over your grill just like you would any other kind of grill brush. And it's going to start creating lines, heat lines that are kind of starting to burn into that wood. But just pay attention to where those lines are and continually line them up in the same spot. And after about 5 or 6 times of cleaning it, you're going to have an etch mark. And every time you clean it, it's going to get a little deeper and a little deeper. And eventually, after using it for a while, you're going to have some teeth that are in there that really can get down in, kind of wrap around that bar and really get that bar clean. So that's the benefit of using something like a wood scraper. This has been used a little bit, kind of start to see see the teeth at the end of it start to get built up in the wood. So the reason we encourage something like that is because when you take a drill brush, this is actually a nicer one than some of them use. You guys have all seen a drill brush before. These little barbs that are here, these little wires that are there, if they're not fully captured and quality and installed, they can come off. And they can get stuck on your grill grate, they get jammed into a piece of grease and you don't know it's there. You flip a burger, it gets in your burger, your kid ends up in the hospital. So we try to encourage you, don't use a cheap drill brush. Make sure whatever you're using, the barbs are kind of bent and wound into whatever they're using so that it holds on a lot tighter. Or just use something like this. They have a kind of a sponge ones that look like they have a little handle on them and kind of look like a Scotch-Brite pad. And those work really good too. Just kind of hit both sides of your grill. But you really want to make sure you're keeping your grill clean because, again, you're more susceptible on a charcoal grill than anything to flare up. So the cleaner the grill is, the less flare up. Now there is some truth to you want a good seasoning layer built up inside your grill. It helps it insulate, creates a little bit more flavor, creates a little bit more steam. That's definitely true. But there's a difference between a dirty grill and a grill that's been well seasoned. Every single grill that I own is well seasoned. They're not filthy dirty. If you never pay attention to your grill, if you never go and clean it, scrape it out, do whatever needs to be done to make sure you get a good clean inside of your grill. You have a dirty grill and you're just waiting for a grease fire. And it's happened to me. I guarantee it'll happen to you at some point. And the first thing you're going to be doing is, dang it, I knew I needed to clean that grill. And this is what happened. Well, now it's clean for you. Hopefully the welds didn't pop and you didn't blow out your powder coat. But yeah, so keep your grill grates especially kind of clean. That'll knock out the potential for flare up. I want to cover a couple different ignition systems here that you guys can use for your lighting your grill. You guys are probably familiar with these, but I'm going to cover them anyway just so you kind of see. I think we still hand out a free pack of these when we buy grills. But these are basically a big match, an adult fun size match that you can use when lighting your grill. There's a strike plate on the back, just like any other matchbox would have. It's a gigantic match, and it's got a knife going on it. Weber cubes, you guys are familiar with these. They're wax paraffin cubes, look like that. And then we have our fire gel. What do you use to handle light?
Fire gel.
Okay. You haven't lit yours yet, right?
Fire gel.
You got fire gel, perfect. What do you guys use to light?
I just use,
Chimney?
yeah.
Okay. Same or chimney?
Yeah.
Okay, what do you use in light yours?
Fire gel.
Fire gel.
Sometimes with little squares.
Okay. So the concept's the same, you're creating heat. The reason I steer people away from a chimney, not that chimneys are bad, I keep them on hand when I use them for tons of different kinds of grills, is the nature of a chimney is that you're getting a lot of coal lit at one time because you're trying to create enough heat to get that grill up to temp. Well, you can dump hot coals on cool coals and kind of get that zone, but at the end of the day, you probably have more than 2 fistful sizes of charcoal going. And you can't be real precise when you dump a chimney because the damn thing's so hot. Then you're taking your rake and trying to rake everything back up. So I like to have a little bit more precision when I'm lighting. So all of these kind of work the same, and the concept is you're going to fill your charcoal box with charcoal. You're going to slide it back in with about 2 or 3 inches on the back or under between the ash pan and the fire box. And then you're going to take either your fire gel or you can take one of these wax paraffin cubes or one of these matches and you're going to light them. You're going to sit it on that ash pan and you're going to slide it up underneath your charcoal. Making sure that the flame that's doing there is actually getting enough charcoal contact that the thing's not too high, so about 2 or 3 inches. And what you've done now is you're introducing heat to your charcoal, which is the goal from the get-go. But you're introducing heat to your charcoal in a very specific location, so that the charcoal that starts burning is directly above that heat source. Now with the gel, you can get a little bit more fancy with it. You can put it in a couple different spots. You can draw a line. You can do whatever. But the idea is that you're being very precise with where you're lighting it. And that way you can control what is burning, where it's burning, as opposed to something like a charcoal chimney. Now a charcoal chimney, if you're using it to like grill a steak or something hot and fast and it's gold, like that's wonderful. If you're trying to do burgers or dogs and you just want a hot fire, get everything lit, chimney's gonna be faster than using almost anything else. But on especially smoking, doing things that are low and slow, having a little bit more precision on your lighting is gonna be important because again, you really wanna shoot for that 2 fistful size of charcoal lit where you can. So what I'll end up doing, and this is a good key for you guys who kind of want to get a longer burn or a shorter burn depending on what you're cooking, is if I'm cooking something hot and fast, I want to get as much lit as possible, I'll go ahead and throw gel, use a chimney, whatever I am, to just get everything hot. But I want to make sure that at the very least, the charcoal that's closest to the door is the first stuff to light. And the reason being is because that's where the primary source of oxygen is going to be, is through those vents on the door. So it's going to have the wind at its back as it burns, and you'll light your stuff very quickly that way. If I'm going to smoke, I actually want to light on the furthest side away from the door, so I'll slide it all in, and I'm actually going to light right about here. And the reason being is because I want to take that fire, and although it's getting oxygen, I don't want to give it so much oxygen that it's got wind at its back and it's heating something up. I want that fire to reach for the oxygen. So if I light on the inside, it burns a lot slower than if I light on the door side. So you just kind of know that's the key to however you're going to cook, is make sure you're lighting in the appropriate spot. So again, I always build a zone fire, and I keep all my charcoal on the right-hand side, knowing that I'm going to have a left-hand side for kind of the cooler area, and then light according to what you're doing. I will say when you're smoking, you have your heat shield over it. And this is the key that a lot of people don't realize, is that air's coming in, it's blowing over the fire, it's coming out of the heat shield and going up, right? Well, people are so used to cooking things offset to smoke that they'll build a fire, they'll put the heat shield on it, and then say they're cooking a pork butt. They're going to put that pork butt right here, because in their mind, I have the heat over here, I want to have that meat off the fire, right? When you have a heat shield and you're funneling air, what you're actually doing is you're putting that meat directly in the jet flow of that fire. So put your heat shield on when you smoke, but then put your meat directly over the top of that heat shield. And what you're doing is that air comes out, it has no meat to hit it, it starts doing that circle, and then it kind of starts to surround your meat. So do that. If you're worried about your grill being clean, dripping, things like that, you can always take a cheap aluminum pan, open up the door and set it right on top of your heat shield, and anything that drips down that would go on the heat shield can now go on the pan, and it's a little bit easier to clean up. Don't leave it in there too long. After 1 or 2 cooks, it'll probably burn out the bottom of that pan, but that is a good way to do it. So just make sure when you're smoking, you put your meat, if possible, over the top of the heat shield. If I'm doing a lot of meat, like a couple different briskets or 3 or 4 pork butts, I might be using a grill extender. I don't think we have one here today. You guys can see them inside. It's basically a grate that's kind of bent like that. I'll put one piece of meat here, and I'll take that heat extender and kind of offset it, kind of keep it in the middle, and put another piece of meat there. So I'm trying to avoid putting it in that jet flow of that fire as much as possible and create that amount of space. I actually use my heat extender for a lot of things. My grate extender. So if I'm going to do one brisket, I'm actually cooking it on top of the heat extender, even rather than on top of the grill, because in my mind, I'm creating another 6 inches of gap between the meat and that fire, and I'm getting more smoke and less heat on it. So I keep that in the smoke position. I'm giving myself a little bit more, playroom. Now, if I want to get that brisket done a little bit faster, definitely put it on the grate. But that extender is a great tool for you to kind of extend the distance you can get away from your fire and buy yourself just a little bit of playroom in what you're doing. You're not worried about getting, it kind of get too crunchy. A lot of times I'll have guys come to me and they'll say, man, I cooked a brisket, it was really good, but the whole bottom of the brisket was like crunchy like a cracker. And like, why did it cook so unevenly? Well, 9 times out of 10, they put that brisket over here so the fire's cooking directly at the bottom and it's on the grate. So it's as close as really it can get to the fire in that type of situation. And you're doing nothing but just creating fire at the bottom of that meat. Of course you're burning the bottom of the meat. Top of the meat might still be fine, but you kind of got a crust on the bottom that you don't really want. So recenter that thing over the fire. You're going to create yourself a little bit more flavor. Questions on everything we've talked about so far?
What time is it? You have a watch on?
Okay, so that's kind of the gist of the 101. We can go into more detail. I am going to check this and see if anyone's asked any questions. Adam Green, hi guys. I don't see any questions. Steven wants a cold beer. Thought they made left-handed Hasties. That's awesome. All right, so I think we're doing pretty good here. I'm going to go ahead and turn this live off. You guys got questions, leave them. We'll come back on and answer them later. Thanks for joining.